Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new Star Wars show that's on Outpost Unknown. We don't have a title, but I'm Matthew. I'm joined by the only other Star Wars fan on Outpost Unknown, Rachel.
Hello. Yes, super fan. What are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, and so we decided, hey, Andor's coming out. Let's go ahead and talk about it. And I know you and I were very excited about this show. Yeah, that's what we're going to do on this very first episode. So I'll have a playlist up on Outpost Unknown, and we have no name for this show yet. Do you have any good ideas,
Mm-mm.
Rachel? Anything that struck your fancy?
Well, I was trying to come up with something because it's just the two of us, like the rule of
There is a
two,
show called The
or
Rule of Two
oh, there's
already.
two
Yeah.
there. Oh, damn. Um, my partner suggested Justice for Greedo for some reason.
Justice for Greedo. I mean, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. Justice for Greedo. Justice
It's
for Greedo.
kind of
Cool. Well, we will keep
cool.
batting it around. Anybody out there listening, if you have a suggestion, throw it in the comments of this video, and maybe you will come up with something great that we will decide to name the show.
We will happily take the fruit of
Yes.
your labor.
Until then, it's just going to be a Star Wars show generally until we are able to figure out something to call this. And I'm terrible at names. Like, I feel I'm awful at naming things, so I'm never good at this stuff. Do you feel like you have a talent for naming things?
No, I come up with great names after I've named something and I'm already locked into a shitty name. Like that is my usual cycle. I think we need to get Steve in here. He's a good
He
namer of
is.
things.
He
Or,
is. I always
yeah.
go harken back to Dead Lantern, and everyone would always ask me, "Well, how did the name Dead Lantern come about?" And I was like, "I have no idea. It was stupid, and it was like the first thing that came to mind." And then the famous story about Outpost Doom, how that movie got its title was Steve and I were in my grandma's basement, and we're like, "Well, Steve? What's the word you like?" And he's like, "Doom," and I'm like, "Well, I like the word outpost. Well, let's just call it Outpost Doom," and that's how that was born. So we're not good.
maybe yeah, maybe we should just slam two Star Wars words together. Like we just got to come up with. I was trying to think of like outposts, some sort of planet name,
Yeah,
but
maybe we
I
could
couldn't
come
really
up with
come up with
our
one.
own Star Warsy planet and call it that. I don't know. We'll figure
Yeah.
it out. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about Andor. The first three episodes dropped tonight on Disney Plus, and this is a
Yes.
12 episode first season, I believe. So I think it goes all the way through the end of November.
Mhm.
We're going to be seeing episodes. So you have a lot of episodes to look forward to coming up. But before we get into Andor, I kind of wanted to let the audience know out there. You and I, we're Star Wars fans, but how big of Star Wars fans are we? How much cred do we actually have? I mean, there's a million YouTube channels out there
Mm.
talking about Star Wars. Why should anyone listen to us? Rachel, on a scale of like 1 to 10, how big of a Star Wars fan would you consider yourself?
I mean, I'm a pretty big Star Wars. It's not my whole personality like some people, but I would say like an 8. Like I watch everything that comes out, even the bad stuff. I read Star Wars books. Yeah, I have a lot of Star Wars merch. I get very excited about any sort of new Star Wars content. I like to the point where I'm maybe a little too forgiving of the Star Wars content that comes out. So I would say I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan.
Yeah,
What about you?
I'm a total fanboy, Star Wars fanboy. I mean, I've been a Star Wars fan since I was a kid, since my mom sent them to me, and I'm actually very excited about this show in particular because we have friends,
Mhm.
Ronan and Steve are good friends, who they
Haters.
hate Star Wars. They like to shit on it. I'm happy to just chat Star Wars with someone without the negativity just flying in constantly and the snark and the sarcasm. Not that we won't be critical if we
Yeah.
feel like something definitely deserves to be critical, but it's going to be nice to just be like, hey, it's just a couple Star Wars fans excited about the Star Wars stuff that's upcoming, and hey, we're going to chat about it. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Andor. Um, this was one of the shows that was announced, man, a few years back at this point. I think it was like 2018, and
Yeah.
I think this was the least excitement for a show that any Star Wars fan really had because you had like Mandalorian and I think maybe they had
Mhm.
announced Boba Fett by then. I don't know, but they were announcing all kinds of different stuff. You kind of knew the Filoni verse was in play. Ahsoka's coming eventually,
Yeah.
and all of that. And so, but Andor, they announced that, and I remember thinking, even as a Star Wars fan, I'm like, huh. That's like the least interesting thing I could possibly imagine of all the stuff that they were announced. What were your thoughts when you first heard that Andor was gonna be a TV show?
So I honestly, I've been hyped from the very
Okay,
start
cool.
about Andor because as much as I love Star Wars, and I do love Star Wars, there the sequel trilogy was so yoked to the like dynastic sort of elements of the Star Wars universe that it it repeated itself, like, it became too repetitive, whereas this, by breaking away from this and, like, getting into the rebellion, which is one of my favorite parts of the Star Wars universe, I was all in, because Rogue One, even though I have some issues with it, that part, that sort of, everyday people in the rebellion, the backbone of the rebellion, like, that's the part of the world that I really wanna see more of and explore, so I, from minute 1, was all in on
Okay, that's
Andor.
very, very cool. I was kind of ambivalent towards Andor, just because I didn't really know a lot about. I mean, obviously, I knew we've all seen Rogue One. Spoiler alert. Cassian Andor dies with everybody else. Like everyone, it's a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
depressing sort of ending, but a good ending, I think, for what that story that they were trying to tell. I really think Rogue One is easily the
Mhm.
best of the Star Wars movies that Disney's made, easily. I mean, I think it's better than any
Mm.
of the sequel trilogy films. I think it's better than Solo, even though I do think Solo is a bit underrated. I don't think it deserves
Mm.
as much hate as Star Wars fans like to throw on it. It could have used 30 to 40 more minutes of character development, but I think as just sort of like a fun romp, I think Solo is pretty good. But I think Rogue One is without a doubt the best of the Disney movies, and yeah, and so I like this time period of Star Wars. As I learned more about the show, I think Tony Gilroy was coming back as the creator or sort of a showrunner of this,
Mhm.
and I was like, well, he co-wrote Rogue One. Thought that was really good. I what I really liked and what I really wanted. Well, let's transition out. What did you want from this show before you saw episodes 1 through 3? You were hyped for it. What was on your little sort of list of things like I want this to be like this for me to be happy and excited about it?
I mean, what I really wanted to see was kind of, like I said, sort of the human element, like the I wanted to see the rebellion. I wanted to see something that was maybe a little less politically murky. Like, as much as I love Clone Wars, and I love Clone Wars, the all the stuff with the Clone Wars and with the Jedi enlisting these sort of like soldiers was always kind of very ugly and really muddied the politics around like the fascism of
Yeah,
the empire. And for me, what I wanted to do was get away from that and like really have a story about like the uprising of humanity against this like massive overwhelming force of the empire. I wanted, like, you know how you loved the Americana of
yeah,
Top Gun? Like, I wanted that kind of story, but in a Star Wars universe. That's what I was hoping for. I wanted to see, you know, that's what if I got that, I was gonna be happy as long as it was, well done. But I didn't want to see a bunch of like fan service. I didn't want to see a bunch of like, I love Baby Yoda, but I don't need all of that kind of thing. I wanted to see something that was more grounded in the reality of
yeah.
the
I think
film.
I'm on base with you there. I did not want Jedi. I did not want lightsabers. I
Nope.
didn't want any of that stuff. I
Mm-mm.
just kind of wanted to see, like you said, I love the politics part of Star Wars. I loved it in the original
Yeah.
trilogy. I
Mhm.
loved it in the prequels. Like I said, I'm a Star Wars apologist. There's things I don't like, but even the prequels, I can admit that there are some major faults with the prequels. But the
Sure.
story that George Lucas was telling, I think, is very interesting. Execution quite flawed, but the story itself, I think, is very solid, and I love the political angle of it, and I wanted to see that.
Mhm.
I came into this wanting two things. I wanted to see sort of like the political aspect of what's going on here, and I wanted this to feel like a real Star Wars like movie and show. And
Mhm.
and what I mean by that is we've just come off of Book of Boba Fett, which I found was underwhelming to say the least. And and
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I was like, yikes. Like to me as a Star Wars fan, I think like we both love Mandalorian. I mean, that goes without saying. Everybody loves Mandalorian.
Mhm.
It's great. But
Of course.
Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi were so underwhelming to me and just such missed opportunities in my mind that I really wanted to see like something, the term gritty is thrown around too much, I think, but I wanted to get back
Yeah.
to something that was like, okay, there's some stakes here, like introduce new characters that I've never
Mhm.
seen before, that I actually care about, and make logical decisions, things of that nature. And so that's what I was wanting,
Right.
going into this. So, oh,
Okay.
and I will say, this may be spoiling a little bit about what I'm gonna think about this. There's one thing that immediately that I loved about this show, and that is the cityscapes, the
Yeah.
urbanness of the cities here, where everything is like decaying, and it's muddy, it's
Mhm.
dirty. There are people and aliens everywhere, all over the place. And
Yeah.
as I was watching this, I was contrasting this with like the Book of Boba Fett and the near empty streets of Tatooine, and it's just
Mm.
like
Mhm.
this show looks like they spent so much more money on it than they did on Boba Fett or Obi Wan
Yeah.
Kenobi. I mean, this thing looks cinematic. But
Yeah.
what's basically the synopsis? Give us an idea of what the first 3 episodes are generally about.
Okay. So we meet Cassian Andor, and he is on sort of a very sexy planet where he is looking for his long lost sister. And in the interim, he comes across two like imperial cops and gets into a scuffle with them and accidentally kills one, and then as a result has to kill the other, and then begins to try to cover his tracks. Meanwhile, there is another space. There's sort of like bad cop Cyril Karn, who is this kind of up and coming baby fascist that, despite being told not to pursue this, like will not give up hunting for the man that
That
killed
guy
these two
is
imperial
great in this
officers.
role too. He is
He
like
is
so
so
perfectly
perfectly
cast. Yeah, that's what I
cast.
was gonna say.
Yeah. Just like every weakness you have, like character weakness is perfect. Just the camp he brings to it, like yeah, he is that's like those little Star Wars touches where we get those like kind of campy
Yes.
empire villains
Yeah.
that I love. It's yeah. So he is living on a this planet. I can't remember the name of it. I apologize. I should have wrote all these down. But he is there. We get a backstory about how he was separated from his sister, that essentially he was taken by I guess they're like scrappers, a woman named Marva who's played by Fiona Shaw, who is excellent. And he has like made this life on this planet and is kind of doing a little bit of lightweight rebellion action, but nothing official. Um the word goes out on the wire that he has been, they basically track down that it's him, and they come some of the space cops along with Saren Karn come to the planet to try to apprehend him. And a shootout ensues. We get a little bit of rumblings of the, you know, oppressed uprising that is just like ready to happen on this planet. And he is spirited away by Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen, who wants to recruit him essentially to the
Yeah.
rebellion.
That was
How
great.
was that?
That
Was
was
that all right?
great. That's great.
Okay, good.
So, one thing I will note is there is nary a stormtrooper in these first 3 episodes at all. These sort of
No.
space cops, what do they call them, like the Pre-Mor Authority security officers or something. And to my
Mhm.
knowledge, this is something new in the Star Wars universe, where it's not like the actual Imperials that are occupying these different planets, because there's a number of different planets they mention these first 3 episodes that they visit. I think Ferrix is the planet it mainly takes place on,
Mhm.
but it's not like you have stormtroopers walking the streets,
Right.
securing everything. It's almost like what they call them, like a corporation or something. It's like the Empire is allowing this corporation.
The
Yeah, like I don't know if it's like a
bureaucracy. Yeah.
private company or something that is
Oh, yeah.
like contracted out by the Imperials, to
Mhm.
keep these people down. But so that was kind of a new and unique flavor that I really appreciated by this, because I'm like, I haven't really seen this before in Star Wars. I want to know more about, like, it makes perfect sense that there would not be enough stormtroopers to literally walk the streets of every planet in the entire galaxy. So what would they
Mhm.
have to do? Yeah, they'd have to contract out to some of these, evil corporations, that are exploiting stuff. And
Yeah.
we get a lot of backstory. There's a bunch of flashbacks to Cassian when he was a young child, and I thought that stuff was really really interesting because they kind of show that Cassian Andor.
Mhm.
Um, they kind of it's kind of portrayed as sort of like an indigenous peoples, right? So they're not quote unquote as sophisticated. They
Oh.
don't have like space travel and flight and stuff like that. So, in the backstory, Cassian Andor is a kid, and sort of like his tribe that he's with are investigating this crash that occurred, and
Mm.
bad shit happens there. It's just kind of like I like that. I like that we're seeing Cassian Andor as a kid and sort of seeing how he moved. Like, where is he now? Like, it's bouncing around.
Right. I mean, I think we're definitely gonna get more about that because, it's interesting that you're saying indigenous tribe. I think they're the kids of whoever worked in that there, because you notice there's no adults in that group. So I think it's more of
Oh,
a Lord of
okay,
the Flies
yeah.
thing, and they're all the children of the people that worked in that quarry.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense. I didn't really think about that when I was watching it. Um,
There's a little bit of a reference to it when, Luthen is talking to him about, like, "I knew your father," like, "I know what happened to your father," like, getting
oh,
hung.
yeah, that would make
So
sense.
I think we're going to get more of that. Something went down on that planet and those kids were just like left there to their own devices. And that's why if you look at their clothes, you can see like elements of pieces of actual clothing probably that they've scavenged from whatever community was there
Yeah,
when
and
they
they
were growing
mentioned
up.
that the Imperials basically there was a horrible mining accident that occurred and sort of destroyed the
Mm.
whole planet or something like that, which I kind of
Which is interesting if they're telling us that and they're also talking about him getting hung, and we know that, like, because of the way that security works, so, like, when the guy's telling him, like, "Just put this aside, we'll make up a story about it, and then the numbers will look better for the
yeah.
Empire," like, it makes you think maybe this is those all feel like breadcrumbs as we're talking through this, I'm kinda parsing this for the first time, that, like, there's some sort of cover up that
Well,
took
it's
place
interesting
on this planet.
because even in canon and a lot of the novels and stuff like that, when the Empire really started, oppressing the universe and the galaxy, they would have major propaganda campaigns like, no, no, we didn't actually do any of this stuff, right?
Mhm.
So within its own canon, Star Wars, like it would make sense that the Empire is trying to cover up whatever happened on this planet. But yeah, and I
Mhm.
think that's super interesting. I love it because the Empire strip mines planets all the time for the resources. To build the Death
Right.
Star, they had to strip mine many, many, many planets, and basically kills off lots and
Mm.
lots and lots of people. Even in Rogue One, you see they're basically mining kyber crystals on Jeddah, and they had no problem just sort of destroying that. It's like they. So I
Yeah.
like that we're sort of getting this because that's always been my big complaint with all of the Star Wars movies. Is that we don't actually really get to see the Empire be really, really evil. They've touched on it a little bit.
Mm,
Yes,
mhm.
Grand Moff Tarkin blows up Alderaan in the original Star Wars, but you don't see anybody. Yeah, you
Pretty
don't
big
see anybody on the
breakthrough.
planet of Alderaan before there. You make no connection with anybody on Alderaan.
Mm,
It's just a random planet that happens to be where Princess Leia is from. And he's like, "Look, I'm going to blow it up." And it's like, okay, he just killed billions of people. Obi-Wan mentions it, but you don't get that connection. I think it's a lot better when you're
right.
sort of seeing like, look what the Empire did to this planet, how they murdered all these people basically and just using them for labor or materials for their Death Star, and then how would that affect the people on that planet? Because at the end of episode 3, I think it is, when young Cassian Andor, I mean, you could tell he's pissed. Like he hates the Empire, right? So you understand why he hates the
Mhm.
Empire just from these first 3 episodes because, probably they probably killed his whole family.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, especially knowing kind of where the story goes, that he's involved with getting the plans that lead to the demise of the Death Star, that probably his parents died mining whatever they needed, strip mining whatever they needed to build it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, like, overall, like, what were your opinions on these first 3 episodes? Did it hit for you, or were you like, "Yeah, I'm still kinda
Matthew,
on the fence here?"
Matthew, I loved it. It was so good. In my opinion. I've seen some criticism out there, and I think that's fine if people feel differently, whatever. But I loved it. I thought I was immediately immersed in the world. I It gave me exactly what I was hoping for, was a much more human story. And then it kind of it does all this like character work in the first two episodes, which I know people are calling slow. I don't care. And then the third episode I think is truly
Yeah.
fantastic. Everything, the action beats were incredible, and I think a lot of it has to do with that it was on a set, so those set pieces are really really effective. But there's also like you understand the world in a way so that when things like they start drumming
Oh, that was
on the
awesome.
yeah, and creating that,
That was so
all of
cool.
that, I mean, I just think yes, and the speech that she kind of gives about, like, it really gets in your head, but yet you're
Yeah,
scared when it stops.
and it's
All
just
that
like
stuff
this,
really
like,
hit for me.
almost monotonous, like, drone in the background. You can see, like, the fear on all these guys' faces too, because 'cause they're like, "Oh my god," and it's just building up. It's like, what is going to happen when these sort of drums
Mhm.
stop? I
Yes.
also love this. I thought this was awesome, and it's not just
Yay.
me being a complete fanboy for Star Wars. I
No, you are
Yeah,
willing to
I
criticize, you
I
are,
was
more so
actually,
than me.
like, looking, and I mean, it's hard for me not to compare this to, like, Boba Fett or Obi-Wan because
Yeah,
I I'm
yeah.
looking at this and immediately from the first episode, I'm like, the writing is so far superior in this to anything that was in
Mhm.
Obi-Wan or Boba Fett. Even if people like those shows, and it's totally fine. There's definitely elements of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan that I liked, but overall, I was just completely underwhelmed by
Sure.
those series, and I felt like they just did disservice to most all the characters in those shows because I thought the writing was so poor.
Mhm.
I know when Steve and I were talking about the book of Boba Fett, it's like Boba Fett is a complete fool in his entire show. Like he does the dumbest shit
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah,
And there's a
yeah.
sequence in these first three episodes of Andor when sort of like we'll call them the evil space cops that they literally are doing logical things that they should do, right? So like one of the main guys is like, look, we're gonna spread out, we're gonna some people get on the roof, some people get over here, and we're gonna like take them out as they come through, right? They're doing things that you would think is
Mhm.
logical, that okay, I can understand it, but then they get sort of one upped by the other stuff that happens, and it's like, oh, see, that's good writing because you're not you're not
Yeah.
putting characters in intentionally stupid scenarios like in Book of Boba Fett. Hey, let's send one Wookiee out to guard an entire section of this town, right? And oh boy, he gets jumped. I
Yeah.
wonder how that would have happened. you know it's like it's like, and so this is like intelligent writing. I love the Bix character. She was fantastic in this,
Mhm.
and it's just like you can tell the acting is on a different level. And I got to say, just the
Yes.
production value and the set design, like I said at the beginning,
Yes.
just like I'm looking in the background. I as a Star Wars fan, I love in crowd scenes. Sometimes I'm not even paying attention to the dialogue. I'm looking in the background to see what kind of aliens I can see, and
Right.
this gave that to me. There's aliens like in every single frame, like, and it's not like, hey, we're gonna drop some fan service for you and show you a character that was alive during this time. It's like, no, these are
Right.
new aliens, new creatures. They worked them into the world. The new
Yeah.
droid is awesome. It's like with Star Wars,
Yeah.
it's like everything. How do I want to describe it? I actually, how much I hate Kevin Smith. But Kevin Smith
I
actually has a
do.
really interesting take on Star Wars, and he says that look, the Greeks, the Romans, they have their mythologies, right? They created the gods and things of that nature, and we have all these great stories from all those different cultures. And he's like, Star Wars is American culture and mythology, and I think there's really something to
Mm.
that take because if you think about Star
Yeah.
Wars, and I know the people listening to this are probably all Star Wars fans, so I'm sort of preaching to the choir, but literally everything from the original, like, trilogy is iconic, right? The sounds, lightsaber
Yeah.
sounds, I say the word TIE fighter,
Mhm.
and what's the first thing comes into your mind? It's the sound. The characters are
Yeah.
iconic.
Uh-huh.
Thus, John Williams' score is iconic. Just the aesthetic and how it looks is iconic. I mean, it just everything about it, the lines of dialogue, the things that happen, and it's like so ingrained and it's done so well that as Star Wars fans, we just we just want that kind of level, right? Because we know that this sandbox that
Yeah.
George Lucas created for people to play in now, there's enough stories there to be able to really make it great. There's no reason you should have a shitty Boba Fett
Right.
show. There's no reason. And so Star Wars fans are
Right.
understandably much harder on the creators when they put out something such low quality, at least in my opinion. And you're just like, look, you could have done this so much better, and you just failed every step of the way. So far, Andor is hitting all the right notes, all the right notes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's evidenced by the fact that I mean, Cassie and Andor are someone we have met before, but he was sort of a
Yeah,
secondary character in a film, right? But for them, I think every single other character, I can't remember if Stellan Skarsgård was in
I don't
Rogue
think
One because
so.
it's been
I
so
think
long, but
he,
so every other character is brand new, and I almost on sight was invested in them because I think that you're right. I think it is evidence of good writing that I'm already very invested in Marva. I'm very interested in Luthen. I I love Bix already. Cyril Karn is already a villain that I am loving to hate. And even Tim, the traitor. I liked Tim, and I was like, no,
yeah.
when he
And
went
what's
down.
what's so cool about this, and I think Mandalorian does this really well as also is like just sort of setting up these sort
Hmm.
of side characters that you don't know, and you fall in love with these characters. And what I think is going to be great about this show, at least I assume what's going to happen, is some of these people, because I think this is going to be 2 seasons, 24 total episodes. So, I mean, they have a
Yes.
lot of story to tell.
Yep.
A lot of these people are going
Right.
down. You know they're going to die off. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, who
Right.
survives, right? Because not everyone's going to die. There's going to be characters that we grow to love in this show that are going to pop up in other media down the road.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think, and
Mhm.
here's the thing, like, I love the Imperials. Like, I love them. I love the Emperor is my favorite character in Star Wars. If I could be any character in Star Wars, I would be the Emperor. Yes.
This is troubling.
I would be the Emperor, and I would force lightning everyone I could. Um, but I just love the Empire's aesthetic, and I love the villains and the bad guys, and it's just fun. And we haven't even seen the Empire in this
Mhm.
yet. We haven't even really seen them. Well, I mean, we're
No.
seeing like their contracted, space cop contractor, but we haven't actually seen
Yes.
the Empire come up. And what I'm so excited to see is like, how is the Empire going to deal with these space cops that are just fucking everything up? And what I expect and what I
Yeah.
want to see in subsequent episodes is I want the Empire to just lay the hammer down on them, because you've got to set up the Empire as like the ultimate scary bad guy. You can't have like these sad sack
Right.
Empire characters who are, and I was a little worried because when Cassian's like, "Oh yeah, they don't even care. I could just walk in and stuff like that." That's a big problem I had on Obi-Wan Kenobi, where I was like, the
Mm.
Empire, they're just portrayed as these complete buffoons and idiots. And how did they ever get here? Was it literally just the Emperor and Darth Vader? Um, I don't want that to be the case. I want there to actually be,
Right.
strength behind the Empire, and I want to feel bad, and I want to feel scared when the Empire shows up. Do you feel like the Empire can
Yeah.
still be scary or threatening, or do you feel like because of all the context that we know and all the other media we've seen in Star Wars that it's just not possible?
I mean, fascism is terrifying. So, absolutely, I think that it can. I think there's an important wrinkle in the way that they talked about the way Andor did it versus like, you know, like Obi-Wan is essentially like, you know, five raccoons in a coat slinking in and out. Whereas
Very true.
Whereas I think they're making a distinction about the arrogance
Yeah.
and hubris of the empire. And I think that's there is a difference there. Like because arrogance is 100% in the DNA of the empire. So exploiting that arrogance and is different. I also think again because of the Rogue One legacy, like this is a franchise or this is a series I think that is going to have actual stakes. I think they know that these they can kill these characters off because they don't need to move a bunch of them into the expanding like TV universe. And if there are high stakes and characters can die, then of course the empire can be terrifying. Like the problem with shows like Stranger Things or later seasons of Game of Thrones is they got rid of the stakes. You know, they don't kill off main characters. And so it's just not that scary. I think here they have the freedom to have intense stakes, and they've made it clear from minute one that this is this more adult kind of Star Wars series. So I think for sure, I think especially in our current political climate, I know we're not going to get into politics on the show. Um, Portraying fascism can certainly be
Yeah, and I think
terrifying.
it could be a learning tool for people too, right? People who aren't really paying
Yeah.
attention to things that, maybe they should, but then they sort of
People who
yeah.
don't watch the
Yeah,
news for
people who
months
are on
on it.
news sabbaticals for a long period of time. Um, those kind of people are like, "Oh, shit, okay, so maybe I should pay attention to what Tony Gilroy's telling me in Andor." Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that Star Wars, it's become so pop culture, and everybody knows it, and everyone knows, like I said, it's mythology. Everybody knows everything really about it. Like one thing that I really disliked about Rogue One, they made this big point of like the Death Troopers, right? We're going to introduce the Death Troopers, and we're finally going to
Mm,
get
mhm.
stormtroopers that do something, and then they don't. It's like when
Yeah.
you've set up a universe where yes, fascism is bad, but all of the ground troops who are supposed to be enforcing it can't shoot the broadside of a barn. It lessens the stakes for me overall because I'm like,
Mhm.
look, it seems like it'd be really easy to rise up against these guys. It's like that's
Right.
why they have planet
Right.
killing weapons because they can't do anything when they're on the ground. So they have to invest in Death Stars to keep people, from freaking out and rebelling against it. And that is canon. If you go to the original Star Wars film, that is the main reason why the Senate wasn't dissolved until 15 minutes into the original Star Wars when they walk in. The Emperor has just dissolved the Senate. Palpatine kept the Senate this entire time because he was afraid that all of the planets would just easily rebel against him. That's why he was building the Death
Right.
Star in the first place. So Star Wars in and of itself has sort of said the Empire kind of idiots, we're just trying to keep things moving here until this Death Star can get built, and then we're going to sort of rule with fear. That's what we're gonna threaten to blow everybody's planets up.
Mhm.
So I think Star Wars just inherently has that problem with it where I'm not going to be really scared of the
Interesting.
Empire in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's also, maybe not an overt reason that Dave Filoni sort of brought in like inquisitors and things of that nature, because
Mhm.
you have to bring in some villains that aren't Darth Vader and the Emperor who are a little
Yeah.
scary, and are kind of like, oh
Yeah.
shit, these other things are happening. So Star Wars, I think, ultimately has a sort of villain problem, even though they have arguably the
Mhm.
most famous villains in cinematic history. I think there's a villain problem there.
I wonder, okay, so do you think troopers can be scary anymore? I kind of feel like once you've seen one helmet, you've seen them all. I don't know that, and I think it's interesting that in this one we're getting rid of helmets entirely and you're seeing the human faces of your
Yeah,
villains.
I think
I wonder.
stormtroopers could be frightening again if they show the stormtroopers actually doing something. Like for example, I love the
Mhm.
Bad Batch, right?
Mhm.
Why can't they have an evil version of the Bad Batch but stormtroopers at this time period? Like just transport like Death Trooper, make Death Troopers
Yeah.
actually do something, like kill major
Yeah.
characters, and you're like, holy crap, I don't want my characters to run into these guys when
Yeah.
they show up. Every fascist army
Right.
is going to have their sort of disposable troops that they throw out there. But show me some actual stormtroopers that can shoot things and kill things and actually, that's the only way you raise stakes on that kind of stuff is they got to do something.
100%.
Otherwise, they're just toys. They're just toys to sell.
I was gonna say, do you feel like because they can't make them too scary because then they won't
Well, I think that's a big
sell?
part of it.
Well,
I think that's a real big part of
yeah.
it. But at least from Disney's perspective of trying to sell toys and things of that, I think that's how they think that they can't do this. But I would counter that by look at like what toys sell the most. It's the villains, right? Kids love to
Yeah.
play as Darth Vader, villain Darth Vader, running around chopping
Mhm.
people up, right, with his lightsaber and stuff
Right.
like that. So I mean, look at Phasma. Before we saw Phasma in Force Awakens, everyone was
Yeah.
like, "Oh God, this is going to be the coolest stormtrooper. This is going to be a stormtrooper that does shit." And it turns out, yeah, it's
Oh,
like, nope,
justice for
nope,
Phasma.
she does nothing. She basically screws the First Order over, and everything. It's just a shiny toy. It's a new stormtrooper toy to sell.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's as simple as like I would love to see in this show going forward, because it's kind of feeling like a spy thing a little bit, intrigue and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see
Yeah.
some like some people on the ground who are actually just your average common folk who are pro empire,
Mhm.
right? We have that today. We have that today. We have a
Mm.
faction. We
You
have a
want the
faction of
Germans.
of
Mm.
of Americans that are pro bad stuff, right? And they will go out of their way to
Mhm.
support the bad guy because they've swallowed the Kool-Aid of the bad guy. And I want to see
Right.
that. I don't want just constant, okay, well now here's the Imperial army showing up and doing stuff. I want to see, that guy, Joe the Baker over there. I thought he was my friend for the past 4 episodes, but it turns out he's an Imperial sympathizer, and he just stabbed me in the
Ooh,
back, and my character that I love just died. Because that's real life,
that
right?
stakes. Yeah, no, that stakes for sure. That's interesting. I hadn't even thought about it. I mean, I think it would be really tough, but it would definitely, I think, elevate this over, the last couple of series that we've seen. I mean, if we're gonna do it, let's go all
Yeah,
the way. So I'm with you. It would make me very sad, but I'd also be like, respect the game.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm hoping. Is there anything specific that you want to see going forward? Any sort of big
Mm.
line items that you're like, okay, I would love it if this show did this over the next what 21 episodes or however many more we got to go.
That's a really good question because we've had some like fun heists and things like that on Mandalorian. So I've had that box ticked, but I think what I want to see. Hmm,
Because like
that's a really
what
good
can Star
question.
Wars do? And I think this is also a valid criticism that people can have of Star Wars is like what can Star Wars show me that I haven't already seen in previous Star Wars media, right? So at some point Cassian Andor is going to infiltrate an imperial base or something. Again, say I've seen
Of
this a
course.
thousand times. It happens in every single Star Wars thing, and they always end up getting what they need. Um, you know, space battles. I mean, I've seen space battles. I know how the story ends. So I don't really know what. It's not like they can steal any Death Star plans or anything. Because I know that's coming in Rogue One. So, and I think it's a valid criticism. Like, what can the show show me?
I think what I want is I want it to surprise me. I want it to show me things that I didn't know that Star Wars could do. That's what I want. I want to be surprised. I want to break out of the formula and see something totally new. And I think so far we're on that
Yeah,
path.
yeah. Like I said, I want to see how the actual um the Senate and the politics dissolve. Like I want to see I want to
Hmm.
see Mon Mothma and how she has to negotiate 1,000 different senators. I mean, our country can barely handle 100 senators. Can you imagine thousands of galaxies?
No,
I want to see how she
no.
does that, and we haven't even been introduced to her yet in these first 3 episodes. So like there's all that's what I want to see. I want to see the actual implosion of the Senate and the infighting and all that. And I'm actually curious. Do you think? And we'll throw out a prediction here. Do you think that they show?
Okay.
We'll say this season. Do you think they show the Emperor or Vader this season?
I think we're going to see the Emperor for sure. 100% because we're going to be spending time in the Senate. We know that for sure. So I think, yes, the Emperor will be present. Darth Vader, I don't think so. I
Okay.
think no.
I don't think that they're gonna show either one of them the first season. I think they'll show the second
Mm,
season.
not even like
I don't think
finale?
so because I at least I get the sense that this show is really, like you said, trying to break away from Skywalkers, and that kind of stuff, and be like, look,
Mhm.
we're telling a completely different thing here. We already know that this guy, the Darth Vader's running around. We already know that he's doing his shit, but I don't think they'll show him. I think they could show an Emperor sort of cameo, like in the Senate or something like that. But I think it would be season two.
Yeah.
I don't think they do that in season one. So
Okay. Okay. I mean, yeah, you could be right. We could see them never. They could just be like a Phantom Menace.
and that's the other thing in Star Wars. Oh, and I don't mean for new viewers to think that I'm hating on Star Wars here, because I'm certainly not. I love Star Wars to my core. But that's another problem that Star Wars has storytelling wise. You have these sort of Deus ex machina sort of things that are just there that you could always have at your disposal.
Yeah.
Well, Darth Vader could show up and end all this real quick, right? The Emperor could show up and end it real quick. Even going forward with the Filoniverse, Ahsoka, and they're bringing in Grand Admiral Thrawn. You got Luke Skywalker just
Ooh,
hanging out
man.
there. It's like you gonna tell me like Luke Skywalker's not gonna show up and sort of like put an end to a lot of this stuff. They Star Wars deals in sort of overpowered characters that just hang around. The
Right.
the Jedi, are
Mhm.
just there, the Sith. And so you have to come up with a unique way in which to explain away why they cannot be there or cannot help. And I think that can be a problem sometimes. So
Well, I mean, this is 5 years um before the Battle of
yeah, so this is
Yavin.
5 years before A New
So
Hope. Yeah.
right. So presumably there are not Jedis kicking. I mean, there are kind of like quiet little pockets of Jedis, but like not like show of force, right? So and Luke is right now collecting. He's like harvesting water on
Yeah, but
Tatooine or whatever.
Obi-Wan's running
So
around, right? Because Obi-Wan took place 10 years
yeah,
before A New Hope. So this is 5 years after the Obi-Wan series. So Obi-Wan is running around. They've already established.
he's busy
Yeah,
rapidly
he
aging in
is.
the desert.
He is yeah, aging very, very rapidly. But in Obi-Wan, because I know they're going to make a season two of that. They haven't announced it, but we know they're going to make a season
Oh,
two. But they
100%,
they
a
they
hundred
set up the
percent.
sort of like underground railroad for Jedi, right? That Jedi are being moved
Mhm.
around and stuff. So the tons of Jedi have survived Order 66. I mean, that's why the
Yeah.
Inquisitors exist, because they're running around trying to kill all of them. So there are plenty of Jedi around,
Mhm.
and I think you know it's just something you got to dance around as a storyteller. Like, how do we just ignore the
Yeah.
fact that there's Jedi running around and hope the audience just runs with it, or do we actually have to address it? You know,
I mean, I think the way that we can like wrap our brain around this is if we believe that like really in A New Hope, like everyone's like, oh, I've never heard of a Jedi, whatever. Like you have to assume that the common person has no contact with the Jedi to the point where they've forgotten it as a thing. So I think there is some room to like they're so hidden away that and unable to actually get into the fray that maybe that's how we kind of like work around it. It's the same problem we have with like Marvel, where every standalone movie, we're like, where are the freaking Avengers?
yeah,
This feels like a job
yeah.
for the Avengers. Like,
And maybe that's just inherent to this sort of ongoing, continuing
yeah,
sort of storytelling. It's like, Thor could end this right now.
yeah.
Like, give him a call. Does he got a cell phone? Just call him up and have him come down and shoot lightning through.
Anybody got
Yeah.
Mjolnir's
So,
number?
but okay, cool. So yeah, I'm all on board with Andor. I'm curious if because I know Ronan and Steve will listen to this, because they're
Haters.
gonna be like just chomping at the bit to see if we like this or not. I wonder if they'll actually be interested in it, because I think people coming off of watching, like, let's just say you're just a general Star Wars fan, right? You're not into the canon, you're not into that.
Yeah.
My mom watched Boba Fett and she loved it. I know friends that watched
Yeah. I
yeah,
know a
I
lot of
know
people
friends who
that did.
watched
Yeah.
Dar or Obi-Wan are like, "Oh yeah, that was cool, man. Darth Vader running around choking people." They're not thinking they're not thinking too deep about, "Oh, this doesn't fit with the canon. It doesn't work with the
Yeah.
characters." They don't give a shit, right? They're there to see Star Wars. They're there
Right.
for what George Lucas brought to the table, which was, this is kind of a thing for kids. We're going to have lots of space battles and lightsaber fights and lots of action. This is
Mhm.
a very different show. This is like
Yeah.
there's like none. I mean, there's an action scene in it, which is pretty cool, but it's just
Right.
people shooting blasters and some things falling around the floor. It's not some grand epic thing.
Yeah.
And I'm
No.
wondering if people would like this. Do you think people will check out of this after like because the first two episodes are so
I
like
mean,
not in a bad way, but they're slow. It's a very slow burn.
yeah. I mean, I think it's smart that they dropped the first 3
Oh yeah,
episodes, for sure, because not everybody I mean, I didn't have this problem, but I could see how other people go who just came off Boba Fett and Obi-Wan might, because 'cause they're thinking that that's the kinda show that they're getting. I will say, though, that we're, like, as an audience, primed after all of this peak TV, all of this, like, the Mad Men's, all of the Breaking Bads, all those things which are, like, character pieces and a little bit of a slow build, especially in those earlier episodes. Like, I do think that the audience has been kind of trained for this to come along. This is kind of this marriage of like peak TV and also an aging fandom. It kind of is meeting in this perfect Venn diagram that I think that this has potential to have real legs with the audience. Hopefully people are not too burned by the last two shows because yeah, I don't know. I would be curious to see. I think Ronan's a lost
yeah,
cause.
he's definitely.
Um because I don't think he'll have the patience for the first 2 episodes. Steve Steve's a dark
He
horse. We
might
might get
he might
Steve.
be interested in this. Yeah, so that's kind of our thoughts on.
Tell him
Yeah.
Optimus Prime is in the 3rd movie or 3rd episode.
Oh my god, Optimus Prime makes a cameo.
We should just tell him it's like an
Yeah,
Easter egg or
yeah.
something. Like, "Oh, you missed it? Oh, sorry. Okay, close the
So yeah,
curtain."
we are both all on board with Andor so far. So I'm
Yep,
looking forward to seeing now.
I'm pumped.
Now I did hear a tease because I was actually watching sort of a semi review of this on YouTube after I finished watching 3 episodes today, and it was an individual who had actually seen the next 3 episodes, episodes 3 through 6,
Ooh,
and this person
yikes.
actually said that the next 3 episodes take the show to a completely different level. And apparently, we're going to
Mm.
Coruscant next episode. So those are the
Oh,
rumors. So we're
okay,
gonna see
okay.
where we go. But that's all I got. Thanks everyone
Oh,
for
I'm
listening to the
ready.
first episode of the currently as yet unnamed Star Wars show on Outpost Unknown. Leave a comment if you have a cool name for us. Maybe we'll take it under consideration as we do this. And I think we'll try to put these out each week as Andor goes. Maybe just do a short 30,
Mhm.
35 minute episode and sort of see, follow along. And then we got Tales of the Jedi coming out next month, which I'm super excited for.
Mhm.
I can't wait for that. Give me more Dave Filoni in my life, please. Just stick it in my vein. And then we got Bad Batch coming
Yes.
in January. I mean, we got lots of Star Wars content. So thank you for listening to Outpost Unknown's unnamed Star Wars show. We'll be back next week.